Your mind is telling stories, and you're treating them like truth. Not because you decided to, but because they arrive fast, complete, convincing. And you don't pause long enough to question them. You think anxiety is warning you, like a signal you should trust. But most of the time, it's not warning, it's guessing. Fast guesses, loud guesses, unchecked guesses. It sounds certain, but certainty isn't proof. And that's where the confusion begins. It feels real. That's the problem. Because your system doesn't respond to logic first. It responds to feeling. So when something feels intense, your body treats it as immediate, even when nothing has actually happened. You wake up, and something already feels wrong. No message, no event, no clear reason. But your mind is already ahead of you, building something in the background, predicting outcomes, imagining conversations, replaying possibilities that don't exist yet. You think you're being careful. You think you're preparing, staying one step ahead. But look closer. You're reacting to fiction as if it's unfolding in real time. And that changes everything. Because your body doesn't know the difference, it doesn't check for evidence, it doesn't wait for confirmation. It reacts to signals. And your mind just gave it one. Your chest tightens, your thoughts speed up. Your focus narrows until everything feels urgent, important, immediate. Not because danger is here, but because your mind said it might be. Most people never stop to question this. They don't separate the thought from the reality. They don't ask, is this happening? Or am I imagining it? They just feel, and then react. You assume intensity equals truth. If it feels strong, it must be real. If it feels urgent, it must matter. But that's the trap, because intensity is not accuracy. Here's the reframe. Anxiety doesn't need facts, it needs momentum. It starts small, a single thought, almost unnoticeable. Then it repeats, then it expands, then it connects to something else, and suddenly it feels like a pattern, like something you should trust. One thought becomes five. Five become a story, a full scenario with outcomes, consequences, imagined reactions. And now you're not thinking anymore, you're inside it. And that story starts controlling your behavior. You hesitate before acting. You avoid situations that feel off. You replay conversations before they happen, and after they're over. You think you're protecting yourself, that you're reducing risk, staying safe. But look at what's actually happening. You're reinforcing the fear, teaching your system that the story was right. Because every time you avoid, the mind learns this was dangerous, even when it wasn't. And slowly, something changes. Not dramatically, not all at once, but consistently. You start choosing smaller actions, safer paths, less exposure. You begin to shrink your world, just enough to feel in control. And here's the internal conflict. Part of you knows this isn't right. Part of you sees that nothing actually happened. But another part says, better safe than sorry. So you listen to that part, again, and again, and again. And over time, something inside you starts to shrink. Not your ability, not your potential, but your willingness to step forward. Quietly. You think anxiety comes from reality, from something happening out there. But most of it doesn't start in reality. It starts in interpretation, in the meaning you assign before anything even unfolds. Look at what actually happens. Slowly. Not the feeling. The sequence. A thought appears. Small. Fast. Almost invisible. So quick, you barely register it. What if this goes wrong? And right there's a gap, a moment you don't notice, because instead of questioning it, you follow it. You build on it. You add detail. You imagine outcomes as if they're already forming. A conversation that hasn't happened. A mistake you haven't made. A reaction you haven't received. And now, something shifts. You're no longer observing a thought. You're inside a scenario. You start reacting. Not to what is happening, but to what could happen. And your body doesn't wait to verify it. It responds immediately. Most people never see this step. They skip over it completely. They go straight from feeling to explanation. I feel anxious, so something must be wrong. But the feeling didn't come first. That's the reframe. The thought did. And the thought wasn't tested. It wasn't slowed down. It wasn't challenged. It was accepted. Instantly. You think you're thinking, carefully, logically, responsibly. But if you look closer, you're not thinking. You're believing. Automatically. Without resistance. Without distance between you and the thought itself. And that's where anxiety grows. Not in reality, in assumption. You treat every thought like a signal, like it deserves attention, like it contains something important you need to solve. But most of them are noise, random, unfiltered, incomplete. But the more you engage with them, the louder they become. Because attention doesn't calm them, it feeds them. So you try to solve them. You analyze, you replay, you search for certainty. You think, if I just understand this, it will stop. But it doesn't. Because here's the contradiction. You're using the same process that created the loop to try to escape it. Thinking. You try to calm the thought with more thought. You try to out-reason it, out-logic it, out-control it. And for a moment, it feels like you're getting somewhere. But then, another thought appears, and you go again. Deeper and deeper, until you're no longer aware of the starting point. You're just inside the loop. And here's the shift most people miss. You think you're analyzing, being careful, being aware, being responsible. But what you're actually doing is reinforcing. Every time you engage, you confirm. Every time you follow, you strengthen. Every time you treat the thought like truth, you teach your mind to produce more of it. And the loop tightens. A Viking didn't trust the first signal. That first flicker, that sudden shift in attention. It wasn't truth to him. It was only the beginning of a question. Something to look at, not something to obey. He verified it. You think warriors acted on instinct. Fast, immediate, unquestioned. But that's the myth. They didn't act blindly, because blind action wastes energy. They observed first. They checked. They confirmed. Because the first reaction is often the least reliable. Imagine this. A sound in the distance, sharp enough to notice, unclear enough to doubt. Your body tightens, your focus locks in, but nothing is visible yet. You think, that's danger. But for him, it wasn't danger. It was a possibility. And that changes everything. Because possibility doesn't demand action. It demands verification. It asks for distance, for clarity, for a second look. And that pause is what protects you. React too early, and you waste energy. You move when nothing is there. You prepare for something that never arrives. Your system stays activated, for no reason. And over time, that drains you. React wrong, and it costs more than energy. It costs direction. It costs trust in your own judgment. Because once you act on something false, you build decisions on unstable ground. So they sent a scout, not because they were slow, but because they understood the cost of being wrong. They didn't rely on the first impression. They created distance between signal and action. They looked again, from another angle, with less urgency, with more clarity. They moved closer, not rushing, not hesitating, but adjusting, closing the gap between assumption and reality. They checked what was real and what was imagined, what was actually there and what their mind had filled in. Because the mind always fills gaps. That's what it does. You think your thoughts are signals, clear, meaningful, important, but most of them are noise. Fast interpretations trying to make sense of incomplete data. A look from someone, a delay in a reply, a small change in tone, and instantly, your mind builds a conclusion. They're upset. This is going wrong. I did something wrong. Unverified conclusions, presented as truth, and you react to them immediately, not because you decided to, but because they feel convincing, like they've already been proven. But they haven't. That's the reframe. A thought is not evidence. It's a suggestion. A Viking wouldn't treat it as truth. He wouldn't act on it without checking, because acting too soon creates problems that weren't there. He didn't trust the first story his mind produced. He questioned it, not aggressively, not emotionally, but calmly. He looked for evidence, not feelings, not intensity, reality. He compared what he thought to what actually existed in front of him, and only then did he decide. Because fear without verification feels urgent, but leads to mistakes. It pushes you into action before clarity arrives. And mistakes don't just cost outcomes, they cost stability. You think modern anxiety is different, something new, something unique to this time. But the pattern hasn't changed, only the speed has. And speed hides what used to be visible. You don't have time to pause, or at least, it feels like you don't. Everything moves quickly, seamlessly, without friction. A thought appears, and before you notice it, you're already inside it. You don't have space to check, no gap to question, no distance to observe. Because the moment something feels off, your mind is already building meaning around it, and you follow, without realizing you had a choice. Your thoughts move instantly, and you follow them instantly. That's the rhythm you've learned. Fast input, fast reaction, no interruption. And that's the problem, because there's no gap, no space between signal and response. No moment where you ask, is this real? It all happens in one motion. You feel something and immediately believe it. Not because you chose to, but because feeling comes with authority. It says, this matters. Act now. You imagine something and immediately respond to it. A scenario forms, incomplete, untested, and your body reacts as if it's already unfolding. You adjust your behavior based on something that isn't there. Most people never slow this down. They don't even see it as something that can be slowed, because it feels automatic, and anything automatic feels true. That's the reframe. Automatic is not the same as accurate. It just means you didn't question it. But speed is what makes it dangerous, not the thought itself, but how quickly it takes over. The faster the loop, the less visible it becomes. And what you can't see, you can't interrupt. So it keeps running. A thought appears. You follow it. You react. You reinforce it. And the next time, it arrives stronger. You think you need to calm down, to relax, to breathe, to reduce the feeling. But calm doesn't come from fighting the feeling, because the feeling is the result, not the cause. Here's the shift. Calm comes from interrupting the process, not stopping the thought, but stepping out of it. From stepping back, creating distance between you and what just appeared. Not pushing it away, not arguing with it, just not following it immediately. But most people stay inside the thought. They try to fix it from within. They analyze, adjust, reframe, all while still being inside the same loop. And that keeps it alive, because you can't see clearly from inside the noise. You can't evaluate something while you're still caught in it. You can't create distance without first noticing you're too close. So the loop continues, not because it's strong, but because it's uninterrupted. You don't stop anxiety by removing thoughts. That's the instinct. To silence them, to push them out, to get rid of the noise. But the harder you try to remove them, the louder they return. Because thoughts aren't the problem. It's how you treat them. You've been taught to fight them, to replace them, to control them. But that keeps you inside the same loop. You're still reacting, just in a different direction. And reaction is what feeds it. So start with one step. Thought. Not the whole story. Not the entire spiral. Just the first moment. That small, fast sentence that appears before everything else builds. The one you usually don't even notice. Notice it. Not react to it. Not follow it. Not argue with it. Just see it as it is. A thought. Not a fact. It will feel strange. Almost unnatural. Because you're used to moving with it instantly. But this is the shift. You create distance. Then ask one question. What is the evidence? Not what you feel. Not what you fear. Not what it seems like. What is actually real. Right now. And here's the contrast. Your mind presents certainty. But evidence is often unclear. Your feeling says something is wrong. But reality stays quiet. And in that gap, you begin to see the difference. Most of the time, there's less than you expected. Not nothing, but less. Less proof, less urgency, less reason to react immediately. And that softens the edge of the thought, not by force, but by clarity. Then, alternative. What else could this mean? Not positive thinking. Not forcing yourself to believe something good. That's just another version of control. Real thinking. Balanced thinking. Looking at the same situation, without assuming the worst by default. Maybe they're not upset. Maybe the delay means nothing. Maybe the outcome isn't decided yet. You think your first thought is truth, because it comes first, because it feels strong. But it's just the first version. Unfiltered, unchecked, incomplete. And most of the time, incomplete thoughts create complete reactions. That's the mismatch. You act fully on partial information. Now take one situation, just one. Not everything at once, not your entire day, where your mind is loud, where the loop is already running, where the thoughts feel fast, layered, hard to catch. Break it, not aggressively, not by forcing it to stop, but by slowing it down. Separate thought from fact, line by line. What did I think? And what actually happened? And watch what happens. At first, nothing dramatic. No instant calm. No complete silence. But something shifts. The thought loses weight. The urgency softens. The need to react weakens, even slightly. And that's enough. Because once you stop treating every thought as truth, you stop building your reality on assumptions. You stop reacting to things that haven't happened. You stop reinforcing the same loop. And that shift, quiet, almost invisible at first, changes everything.